So good morning everyone, and welcome to this Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Thursday the 17th of July 2025. My name is Wayne Daly. I'm Chair of Family and Children's Overview and Scrutiny, and this is the first Scrutiny Committee of this new electoral term within Northumberland, so I'm really pleased that that honour is being given to Family and Children's Services. So welcome to everyone this morning, welcome to all of our new members as well. I'm sure you'll get to know each other over the course of the next municipal year. We start off every meeting with a standard set of agenda items. The first one is apologies for absence, and I'm going to hand over to Leslie to see if we have any.
We've received apologies from Councillor Horncastle.
Thank you very much. And then we move on to the minutes of the meeting which was held in March of 2025. And that is simply to note any issues of accuracy. There are some members who were present then, so can I just indicate if there are any matters of accuracy which you wish to point out? If there are none, I will sign those off as a true and accurate record. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I will sign those off. We then move to, again, another standard item, which is really important, is disclosure of members' interests. I understand that everyone has completed their members' declarations of interests, but again, please make a note with your declarations of interest if there are any items on an agenda which you see before a meeting. If you need any clarification about whether there might be a prejudicial or non-prejudicial interest that you need to declare, please get in touch with Rebecca and she can help you out, or indeed you can get that clarification at the meeting. So on that basis, everyone's read the agenda items today. I'm assuming nobody has an additional declaration of interest they want to clarify. Good. Right, we are cantering on. So let's move into the substantive part of this morning's meeting, which is taking a report which is on children's social care and annual self-evaluation. But before I take that report, what I want to do is I want to bring in Audrey Kingham, who will introduce herself in more detail, and some of the people from the directorate she works in, just ahead of taking that item. So Audrey, if I can bring you in, please.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. Good to see you. I'm Audrey Kingham and Executive Director for Children, Young People and Education in Northumberland and the Statutory DCS. So this morning you have got, I'm going to say, two ends of some of our statutory responsibilities here in Northumberland. So the reports that you see today are very indicative of the work that goes on, a summary, if you like, particularly in our children's social care and social work that you will hear. And I'll bring Vicky in a wee while to just give you an overview ahead of that particular report. These are really important to us, so we have that, and we also have our skills inspection report. Our last FACS meeting, you will have read the minutes, you had the Northumberland skills team talking about their self-assessment report. So really important parts of our annual cycle and rhythm within children's. As members of this committee, we really welcome your challenge, and very much aware, as Chair has said, that we have some new members joining the committee. And so we want to make sure that we immerse you in everything children's and give you as much information as we possibly can. I'll talk a little bit about that in the work programme and potential opportunities later. But please, we welcome the challenge, we welcome the questions, and we hope that you see how these fit into the children's cycle and the importance of both of these processes. And you'll hear more of these from different service areas across the municipal year. So thank you very much for that. And I'll hand over to Vicky.
Morning, everyone. I'm Vicky McLeod. I'm the Director for Children, Young People and Families, and I know I recognise some faces, and I've spoken in front of some of you before as well. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview about my role and what sits within children's social care. So I manage everything all the way from early help, where we're supporting families before they require statutory services. Our family hubs, which is community-based family hubs that sit within Northumberland in a variety of different locations that are open to our communities to access, again, for a variety of different things to really support our families with their young children being ready for school and the best start in life. I then manage all of our statutory services, so social work services around safeguarding, child in need, child protection, and where children need our care as well. So when children come into our care, cared for children, I manage that area of the service, as well as the children who leave our care, and they're our care leavers. So you will hear me in different forums talking an awful lot about our responsibilities as corporate parents and your responsibilities as members as corporate parents as well. And ultimately we would want to do some work with everybody over that too. So everything all the way through to when children ultimately do get adopted, and everything that sits in between that as well. So fostering residential homes, our youth justice service, and our multi-agency safeguarding hub, where we get those first contacts. They sit within my breadth of the service, and all things that Vicky also manages as well, which is our independent reviewing officers, and how we quality assure our services as well, and how we know we're performing as well as we can be. So I'm going to introduce you to Vicky in a minute. She's going to talk to you a little bit about our self-evaluation. The self-evaluation really supports us to understand ourselves well. It gives us a lens to see what are we doing well, what do we want to improve on, and actually what's our vision for this next year and what actions do we need to take. And it clearly fits in with value for money and our processes of developing service plans as well. The report forms the basis of talking to Ofsted. So every year we have to have a conversation with Ofsted around where do we think we are and how well are we doing. And Ofsted challenge us and ask us questions about what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it and how do we know we're doing that well. So we are very focused in on impact of the work that we do. Which is really, really important to us. So everybody will be aware that our last inspection, or some people might not be aware, but our last inspection was just over a year ago in May 2024, and when Ofsted actually came in and they looked at the entirety of the services, and what they said to us is actually you are delivering outstanding services. We are anticipating probably into the new year that we'll get a further focused visit. So we're all geared up for that. And I know that Audrey will be meeting with Ofsted, and we will be steering the way in terms of looking at what area do we want them to come in and focus in on to support us in our development and our learning as well. But I know that Vicky's going to talk a lot more to you about what our self-evaluation is and what the self-evaluation that is the most recent one looks like as well. So I will hand you over to Vicky McKay. I'm Vicky with the Y, by the way, and this is Vicky with an I, just so people can be really clear.
Good morning, everyone. As Vicky advised, I'm Vicky McKay. I am Head of Service for Quality Assurance within Children's. You might think, what is that? In terms of quality assurance, there is a lot of activity that goes on, not just within social care, but my role also expands into the world of education as well, including SEND. We work really hard throughout the year to ensure that this document that is in front of you isn't just a moment in time, that it is something that we work tirelessly throughout the year in evaluating our services. The document itself is a collaborative piece of work. It isn't me sitting in a dark cupboard somewhere completing the document. It is a piece of work that we have that it is informed through our performance data. We also have the views of our workforce within that. We also have the views of our young people and parents and carers within the document as well, to help us really drive and understand the impact of the work that we're doing for our young people. The self-evaluation, you might think, why do we do that? It really gives us the opportunity as a directorate to reflect on our practice. The current document in front of you is from September 2023 to December 2024. We have now aligned that document to a calendar year document, so we will be, as of October this year, spending time reflecting on our advances within this calendar year, and we will be producing that so it is in line with our annual conversation with Ofsted that was in March of 2025. The feedback from Ofsted in regards to our self-evaluation document is that they felt it was a good overview of the service and it was a robust overview of the service as well, which also helps us in those challenge and driving forward conversations. In terms of the next slide, you will see that this is our vision for 2025. As Vicky already highlighted, we were very fortunate to be graded as outstanding in our ILAC inspection in May of last year. That was a real celebratory moment for us in social care to really emphasise the impact that we're having for our children, young people, parents and carers. But that doesn't mean that the work stops. It means that we just are continuously ambitious to drive the work forward, to improve consistently, and to ensure that we're working with our parents, children and young people to hear what they want to improve within our communities. In terms of what we are doing well, I've broke that down in the slide just to highlight a number of key moments throughout that calendar year. Some of you may have heard about the Sophia Learning Review that was undertook through our NCASP Safeguarding Board. That learning review has actually had national recognition, and we've had a number of local authorities ask us how we did that and why, what the process was in terms of what we do and what we're doing. The key element for yourselves to be aware of in terms of why we want to celebrate the Sophia Learning Review is this is a young person that is in our care, that we are corporate parents for. But Sophia was front and centre of that review. Her voice is very much in that review. We regularly update her in terms of the impact that that review has had. We had over 200 participants to the training of that information with her parents and carers at the centre of that learning. The review was also written to Sophia. So it was a letter of celebratory practice as well as areas for development, which if you've seen learning reviews, it often just focuses on the areas for development. We were really keen to pick out the positive aspects of that as well. One of the other things that we're incredibly proud of in Northumberland is our vacancy rate. We know nationally that specifically in social work, there is an issue with recruitment and retention in social workers. We are really pleased to say that we've worked very hard over the last 18 months and we have got the fewest vacancies that we've ever had in social care and also the fewest agency staff. Not only does that link into our value for money in terms of paying less for agency workers, more importantly, it provides consistency for our young people that they have a stable social worker, a stable early help worker or a stable IRO. In terms of next area of practice that we really want to celebrate is our safeguarding for children. So in terms of our safeguarding, what I mean by that is when we look at legal processes and we are in the unfortunate event where we are putting matters in front of a court. What our court and our judiciary are telling us in the region is that we're one of the best local authorities in the region in terms of timescales in court. So that means that we are creating plans for our family and children that are done in a timely manner and avoiding delay for them. In terms of one of our other areas is about permanency and creating that plan for young people so they know what's happening in their lives. We are currently one of the best in the country for securing what is called a special guardianship order. So in the event where young people are unable to go home to their parents, we are essentially the best in the country of ensuring that our young people are placed with somebody in their family or a network member that they are aware of. We are actively sitting here crossing our fingers, aren't we, Vicky? Because we think that the statistics will highlight the same again this year. Which is something that we're incredibly proud of because it just means that our children are staying in Northumberland as well. Another area of success is around our early help and we are continuing to drive that forward this year with our social care reform work. We're really keen that prevention for our families is at the earliest opportunity, and that families are aware of what prevention that they can get and the impact that that has. So we continue to see year on year a steady increase of people accessing our family hubs and early help offers. You also may be aware, one of our key drivers in the next, this year and previous year was about opening more children's homes in Northumberland. We have got a great investment for that, and that is that we do spend a lot of money on external residentials, which unfortunately means our children are placed further away. Northumberland has a clear drive and listening to our young people that they want to stay in Northumberland. And we want to be able to control and have the outstanding work that our residentials do and our workers have. We are really pleased with the opening of Pegsworth residential home, and we were overjoyed that their first inspection they received good, which is quite unheard of at times in terms of residential inspections, especially when they've just opened up quite recently. One other aspect in Northumberland that we'll continue to be incredibly proud of, and I think it's about us thinking outside the box as a local authority about what works for our communities, is our specialist assessment teams. So we have a pre-birth team and a specialist assessment team, and they're trained in really bespoke assessment work, which allows more one-to-one support for our families, parents and carers. I've had the great pleasure of, as part of my quality assurance work, going out and doing what we call practice days, which is a bit of an evaluation of those services. And I just have to say the work that our pre-birth team are doing and the feedbacks from some of our parents and carers is just absolutely outstanding in terms of that work. You may think this all sounds great, but what next, and where do you see the areas of development? So one of the things that we're incredibly passionate about in children's social care is about our corporate parenting responsibilities and making sure that the children that are in care in Northumberland are front and centre of what we can provide for them. We have very much an ethos in children's that these are our children and we will treat them as they are our children. We had the great pleasure yesterday of spending some quality time with some of our care leavers to advise us of what they would like to see in our quality assurance plan moving forward. We really want to develop that, not only in the council, but also with our local businesses about what their promise is to our children in their local community. Whilst we touch on placement stability is a area of success in terms of the buildings of the residential homes, we continue to strive to have more stability for our children. I think that will forever be an area of development for ourselves. We don't want our children to be moving placements and moving homes. We want to keep them in a long-term stable placement where possible, which links us to our other area of development of the completion and driving forward the completion of more children's homes within Northumberland. And most importantly for me, because it is part of my portfolio and what I do, was the growth and development of a participation service. I'd be really pleased to hear that over the last 10 months, we have gone from 1 participation worker to 4. We have just launched a recent survey to our young people in Northumberland. We had 1,003 responses from our young people. Out of that, our young people, there was 300 that asked to be part of how we could develop the council's vision for young people further, which is just an outstanding for us response. And we will continue to work with the participation team across the whole of children's to ensure that the children's voice is at the heart of everything we do. So in terms of next steps, looking at our key priority areas, we have got 4 key priority areas which we continuously review. Within children's social care, we have meetings every quarter with our extended leadership where we review this document and ensure that we are on track. If we aren't on track, why? What are the barriers and how do we move that forward? As you may imagine, the social care reforms which the government have been rolling out over the last 12 months has really took fruition in terms of our plans for the next year to 2 years, and we are working tirelessly with our early help colleagues and social work colleagues to ensure that that practice of early prevention and the right service at the right time is fully embedded with our young people. In terms of any other priority areas, one is around workforce. So we talk a lot about opening residentials, but what about the staff within those residentials? We've got a really successful social work academy. It's had 14 cohorts of social workers, and we are very confident that that has been one of the drivers that's produced that stability in our workforce. So one of the things that we're looking at is how we develop that academy and how do we include not only our social workers but also our residential staff and our early help staff, so they get the best introduction to the workforce and have the ability to reflect and feel supported through that secondary trauma of working with children and young people in Northumberland. I don't have anything else to take us through today, so I'll hand back over to Wayne, if that's all right.
Thank you very much, Vicky. So the way that this format works is you'll hear from officers with the reports, and then what I'll do is I always open it up to the Cabinet member, Guy Renner-Thompson, who we've got here today, for any comments that he wants to make. And then I open it up to you, based on what it says in the report, which is you're looking at the report. If there are any comments, clarifications, anything that you'd like further information on, and then we take those recommendations forward, again, based on that critical friend model. So, Guy, can I bring you in before I open this up to the floor?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The actual report is many, many pages long, and I'm not proposing to go through it line by line, you'll be pleased to hear, but just to give a general overview that, you know, since we've been in, pushing the Ofsted ratings of the various parts of children's services in the council has been a priority for us. You know, this process, this annual process, has been an integral part of us getting our outstanding Ofsted rating. Within that Ofsted rating, 2 of the categories were good, and we'd like to see those go to outstanding as well. So all 4 categories come to outstanding at the next Ofsted inspection. 2016 children's services were rated as requires improvement. So this has been a big, long journey to get us to this point. It's an important piece of work that we do every year, and the benefits are all there to see. You know, children in care are a very small number of children in our community, but they're the most important, you know, sector of children in our community, because without our help, they will not go on to lead good and productive lives. So an awful lot of financial resources, human resources, and our everyday thinking goes into children in care, and I hope that you can see that from the report that you've got today.
Brilliant, Guy. Thank you very much. So I am now going to open up the floor to questions, clarifications that we can take through officers. So in order, I can see Councillor Hill and then Mr Hodgson, and then I'll take some further ones after that.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one point of clarification and one question. So the overall point is it's really positive picture, and what Audrey said at the beginning about being open for questions and being a critical friend and so on. What you read in this report, there's very much openness. There's no defensiveness. You know, sometimes you think, oh, they try to hide this or they try to cover up that, and think, oh, I'm not going to go on about the NHS. That's a different scrutiny panel, but you know, you sometimes think they're just sort of kind of like a bit of a fudge, but this is a really open, transparent report, and I think anyone would read it think, you know, we're good, we know we're good, but we really want to improve. So that's very positive. The bit, there was a bit about school attendance, which doesn't fare well compared to the national average, and there's going to be more work done on that. I was just wondering a little bit of a feel of what the causes of that are. I mean, I'm presuming where a school's not performing well, attendance is lower than the average. I think that's a presumption. Also, probably areas of deprivation, attendance is lower. Possibly, and just thinking logically, where there's a distance to travel for school, maybe that's another factor. But it just would be good to get in why it said in the report that we were traditionally strong and we've gone down. So it'd be good to just a bit of an understanding about what's causing that. And my final point is reading the whole report and about the overall aim about improving lives of children and happy childhoods and so on. I know it's not easy, but it's just a question around capturing children in, because and Audrey knows this, because I'm probably most weeks I'm in contact with, but the amount of families that you come across and the situation there, I'm obviously going to give examples, even certainly not specifics, but you think, I can't believe they're not in contact with the way that they're living, their circumstances. This is just a bit of commentary about capturing, because obviously all the data, it's all people within the care system, but are we doing everything we can to capture people that should be within the system and should be getting support?
Vicky or David, do you want to take that?
This is a little bit like university challenge, working out who's going to answer the question.
So put one from three here. So let's start with
If we
David.
start with school attendance, I think that was the first point you made there. The reasons for poor school attendance are many. I mean, you mentioned a few there. That each case in each individual young person, it will be different. We do analyse the reasons and the barriers for folk in accessing their education. Each and every school has a dedicated educational welfare officer who attends the school every 2 weeks to go through all the attendance of every learner, but will also absolutely prioritise any learner that's cared for or involved with children's social care in any way, shape or form. The very varied reasons, but there are multiple cases where possibly a learner's attendance isn't as strong as the national average, but has still been improved significantly over time. And I just wouldn't want to miss that out. We still wouldn't be complacent with that, but it could be a learner who absolutely struggled to attend a particular setting and had an attendance that was exceptionally low, getting close to zero. But through the work of the education department and children's social care, that would be highlighted by the EWO, that the young person might attend one of our fair access panels, which would look for a better or improved provision for that young person, and then enable that to change. If that led to an increase in attendance, possibly to around 75% mark, which is still not good enough, but the difference, they would be highlighted in the not great list currently in that report, but actually on reflection for that individual, there has been marked improvements. I'm just saying there's continual scrutiny and methodologies to improve attendance.
Sorry, just what I just wanted to get to the bottom of, it seemed to be, because obviously look at individual circumstances, that's important, but when you're looking at a stat, you're looking at an overall picture which is creating. Am I right in saying that in Northumberland, pre-COVID, it was performed well against the national average and now it's gone down? So is it, I mean, one of the factors could be that there's an increase in the numbers, that attendance is almost zero, bringing down the whole stat. So it was just obviously looking for the solution and to help this, to really get a feel of why you think that has gone down from being better than the national average to worse as a collective, not individuals make up the bigger picture, but the whole picture collectively, why that's happening.
I referred to a previous answer, to be honest. It is about individual cases. We've analysed it. There isn't one or two areas which specifically outweigh others. We do have a robust system to support those young people, and we have significant improvements for some of them, but not all, hence why we're behind on the national average.
I'll just bring in Audrey and Vicky on this one, because it's a really valid question. So let's try and delve into this one. Yeah?
So you're right, pre-COVID, Councillor Hill, we were above national average. Since COVID, we've not recovered back to that. And it's for all those reasons, David said that, it is multifaceted. It can have particular pockets in Northumberland where we see a greater challenge around bringing that. But that's why the teams over the last 4 or 5 years have changed, developed, thought about what's the next thing they can do. There isn't a single way in which we can solve that. We monitor really carefully. Clearly, the social care team are looking very much and focused even more laser-like around our cared for children and those who are possibly our most vulnerable. We've developed over the last year, which I think might talk to your point, Councillor Hill, an edge of care team. So done much more around those who are perhaps not quite yet into a formal system, so that we're not just focusing on the children who are within the care system. What I can say to you is, because remember this report that we're talking about is the looking back. It does have the looking forward in terms of what we're going to do next, but it's primarily the looking back. And actually just the end of last week, I looked at this half-term's attendance. We are starting to see a gentle improvement. And I'm saying that really carefully because I don't want to set an air of optimism. But it is interesting that we start to see in the summer term a period of time where we can see some additional fluctuation in attendance, that we're now starting to see an uptick. So we will correlate all of that and check to see whether any of the work that's been done is having a particular effect, in which case we may have a stronger focus on that. But that would be some work for us to do at the start of the new academic year. And we'll divide, I've got the headline, we'll look at all of that at each of the local areas and each of the pockets that we currently understand. You will know through all of our work and the wider inequalities work around the county that actually we focus. We do know we have communities where we have a stronger challenge and focus, and so we will look at all of that, and we look at that through all of our internal scrutiny and corporate performance function.
If I can just come in and say a little bit about cared for children and the work that we do. So for some of our cared for children, when they come into care, they've not been in education before that, and that's formed part of the complexity of the reasons why they actually came into our care. But once they're in our care, we're absolutely committed to actually getting them into education and attending school. For some of our other children who do come into our care and maybe it's not placed within Northumberland or maybe it's outside of the North East region as well, there can be a delay in getting them into school because we're relying on the local authorities to do that. But what I do know is that our virtual school work tirelessly alongside education colleagues as well to make sure that our children have that provision. And if they're not able to get into school straight away, then what else are we doing to make sure that they are getting the education that we need? And I think without doubt, what I would say, coming from a social care background, since the pandemic, we absolutely have seen complexity of need increase, and what's coming through is multifaceted, things around drug and alcohol, things around domestic violence. They have all increased, which do impact on children, which can lead to them actually not being in school attendance as well. So those are the areas that we're working really hard on and where we're saying actually we want to drive forward with the actions and how can we do that. So for instance, I mentioned earlier our family hubs. The family hubs, when we got that funding a few years ago, was absolutely focused in on how do we get that best start in life, but how do we make sure our children and young people are ready for school, and that actually they understand and value the meaning of being ready for school, that they're able to learn and develop before they even get to that age of going into school through reading books, etc., etc. So there's an awful lot of work going into that prevention space, and really pleasing to note, I think, that the government are invested in the family hubs and that early prevention through the reforms, but actually saying that they're putting a lot more money into that area. So all local authorities in the country will have family hubs in their local authorities to work on that best start in life and being ready for school.
Before I bring Mr Hodgson in, I just want to capture the second part. This is a little bit of an assurance question. So if a child is not attending school, what triggers or what multi-agency trigger is then activated? So I think it goes on to your point about how we monitor, how we have some of those families on the radar of us or other partners. So non-attendance, what's the trigger? What happens? What are the multi-agencies?
So in terms of the trigger, then we would be reliant upon school ultimately putting in a referral to our multi-agency safeguarding hub, and we will triage that and we'll look to see who is the best person to support at that point in time, and we'll consider not just the educational aspects but what else is going on for that child and what information do we have on a multi-agency basis. That will then lead us to determine actually, do we give early help, and do we signpost into our early help system? We've got early help that's sitting the front door, and we'll look to go in and actively support the family in the first instance. If there is complexity of need and it is meeting that threshold where we feel there is safeguarding concerns, then we will ultimately step into that space of undertaking assessment and seeking to support the family.
Thank you for that. Right, Mr. Hodgson.
Cheers. Welcome back, Wayne. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, a great report and well done. But it was interesting just picking up on your point where you said you're going to change to statistics or data for a calendar year as opposed to the academic year. Now, we've just been talking about attendance, and in the report it refers to the academic year. So if you're going to do comparative data, how are you going to do it? If you're going to switch to the January to December and then sort of compare it with that. So that's one point. The other thing as well is just as far as attendance is concerned, because one of the questions I was going to ask was on that one there. Now, I've said to you before, I was involved for many, many years as chair of government at a school in Pennywell, which, as you know, is one of the most deprived parts of Sunderland. And one of the biggest issues they had in terms of attendance was the number of children taken out of school for family holidays. But the family holidays were actually in September. And it was so significant that the school never actually recovered. Its attendance rate plummeted in September, and because of other absences throughout the year, it never really got above that 85%, it was low 80s. So again, picking up your point, David, there must be data which says that is a factor, stripping away other issues as well. Within your own data find, how does that impact in Northumberland for that one there? The other thing as well is, just linked to my experience there, one of the big concerns we had was the drop-off in terms of the children being primary ready. It was a real issue. And when I pushed on this, the real alarm bells were ringing because of the loss of Sure Start. They really did promote that and say this was the key. This gave us the boost, the support, and so on. Now, I know you've brought in family hubs, but could you with confidence say that your data that you had under Sure Start is actually got back to that or has improved with the family hubs? Because, again, we have the problem. Children coming in, whether they're in care or not, and they're not ready for school. It's catch-up, constantly playing catch-up. And if we could invest in that early on, then that would solve so many problems as the child goes through its education journey. So yeah, it's that worry that we have that it's great that you're getting the family hubs, but are they actually doing what Sure Start did? And everybody I've spoken to really was extremely positive about Sure Start.
I'm going to bring Audrey. Sorry.
No, and the third point there was, I beg your pardon, that's my scribbles then, was just overall, one of the concerns we have as an authority is the cost of special educational needs and the runaway figure, that budget there. Has your investment, say like the children's homes and special schools, has that started to help reduce that runaway budget? And I think, looking ahead to the future, that's, this other sort of the green shoots coming through for that, which, so that they're the three.
A few simple questions there.
Sorry.
I'll pass them over to Audrey.
Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll start just with certainly a couple. Probably David will want to come in around the school readiness. But if I could just say, we are not beginning family hub work in Northumberland. We already have family hub work. We were, if you recall, one of the Trailblazers awarded, so we're into our 3rd season, if you like, of family hub. So Vicky talked about our breastfeeding service, our pre-birth team, all of that community-based work. We are there already and have been for a number of years. So I will talk a little bit at the end about the giving every child the best start in life, the new policy that's just launched. I'll talk about a little bit about that later and some of the development work. So we are ahead. Northumberland already has that. We have factored all of that into our self-assessment report. We have for a number of years talked about the earlier we get to work with children, the better. And actually, you know, the last report we're going to get today is the skills team. And so actually, this end of the table can influence that end of the table so much more. What we have to think about carefully, though, is doing so much more of that earlier. We can't forget the people who are at that end now. That's really important. And so you will hear, as a committee over the year, some of that work, and it's really important we bring that forward. In our schedule and in our forward plan, we'll hopefully see that updated, ready for the September or October facts. I think it's October facts we have. You will see in there, we'll bring family hubs to you, so we'll talk about that. And I'll tell you at the end, I'm feeling like a taster here, giving you a little spoiler, a bit of Pearl and Dean. Yesterday we had a significant announcement in Northumberland from Cabinet Office in Northumberland. We're part of that announcement, so I'll tell you about that later. And that's further opportunity and investment. What I am really keen to do in children's is, you will always hear me talk about children's. So I rarely split out, unless I'm specifically talking about education, skills and SEND, or children's social care and early help and safeguarding and all the work. I talk about children's. So we have to think about, this is the child, and we have a number of services that the children and families will access at any point. And I am very keen to ensure that they have almost a streamlined approach and contact from us with our services that builds. If it's, for example, a child with a disability, that disability is likely to follow them through in life and they will ultimately become an adult. So our work with adult services is really, really crucial. And so you heard Vicky say her role is quality assurance children's. And Vicky will talk as much about SEND as she will about other areas. So really important that earlier we do things, and we are really shifting our system downstream or upstream, whichever direction you want to call that, to make sure we do that without forgetting everybody else currently in our system. I'll let David come in and he'll want to talk about our GLD and the work that we're doing, our scores this year and our scores last year. We've just got them, so we'll be able to talk to you about that. Without doubt, and you will have, I'm sure, seen our Schools Forum headlines from yesterday. So we had Schools Forum yesterday and our SEND costs. It is a significant rising challenge, whether that's cost or work or need. So currently, our demands are significant, as they are in the rest of the country. So our demand levels have increased by 92%, and our funding over the last 4 years, let me clearly say, our funding has increased by 16%. So you are right, Mr Hodgson, to point out that then potentially becomes a burden on NCC, and we have talked about home to school transport in the past, and actually NCC bridges the gap, so that the council budget bridges the gap around our home to school transport. But they're our statutory responsibilities. So we have to provide that, and we are not going to not provide the service, the most appropriate service, and us working together, you know, with a statistic and a funding level at that level, this team and the rest of the team, there are another 8 colleagues who are the experts in each of the areas across children's, and we work tirelessly thinking about how could we do that differently, how could we work together, because if we work together on something that could free up resource, it gives us a challenge, for example, as Councillor Hill said, the attendance. You know, the children who are on the edge of care and families who have that challenge. How do I free up that resource? Because it's a real challenge to free up the money to be able to do that. That's a core piece of our daily work. And as the senior team in children's, we spend a lot of time focusing on that. You will be very interested to watch the Schools Forum view from yesterday and the detail. I can happily send the presentation because I think you would be really interested in it. That does show where we rate against some national stats. Our current overspend is circa 10 million, projected to increase. We are very low on the national profile in terms of that overspend. Not doing anything about it isn't an option because we can't continue to do that. But also we have to support our school population, our schools, school leaders and school teams to be able to support more of the needs of children so that we can have more mainstream inclusion. And so therefore, we have to be able to give them the resource to be able to do that for our children. So hopefully that gives you a bit of flavour around send. I'll happily send that because I did think about you yesterday when we were talking in School Forum. And I thought you will really be interested in this. And I'll pass to David to pick up our early years and the holidays. I think we should be able to get a holiday stat. I haven't got it in my head. I'm not as good on 92 and 16 as I am with the attendance stat, but I will find that for you, and if we've got it, I'll get that. I'll share that with all forum members, with all committee members. But I'll pass to David.
First, just the holiday one. Yeah, we do have those statistics very clearly broken down by any attendance absence and the reason for that. Holidays are an issue. The schools are really robust, actually, though, in terms of almost never authorising holiday absence. And also our EWO service are very responsive in terms of where a school believes that there should be using every tool in the box and some robust responses, that wherever that's requested, fines, etc., are carried out across Northumberland. It's not overall a great thing, but certainly a deterrent to do that. Specifically for this report, though, and obviously concentrating on cared for children, I can't quote figures off the top of my head, but the issues for on the list of challenges to attendance, holiday would be a low one in this particular cohort. It's not a significant element, but as Audrey said, we can possibly close down those figures for you to give you the breakdown of where holidays are the bigger impact on non-attenders in different groups. In terms of school readiness, yes, absolutely. There's two key aspects to all of our work across all partnerships, is both that the young person's ready for school and the school is ready for the young person. So we do have each year we do have a number of learners who do well at their nursery provision, but then struggle on the transition into the school provision. And sometimes that's because they've had some developmental delay, and therefore that's a challenge for the school delivery at that side. But there are other times when some reasonable adjustments made by the school might enable that transfer and that transition to work, and also for those developmental delays to be caught up. Overall, though, Northumberland's position is very strong. So the key measure for school readiness is a good level of development. Probably 6 years ago was the first time Northumberland had passed the national average for GLD, and that has been sustained and continues to be sustained today. That's a reflection of the work across the whole partnership, the work of the early years providers, the work of the reception and school teachers, in order to reach those percentages. But we've like I said, about 5 or 6 years ago, possibly as a knock-on effect of the impact of Sure Start, actually, because that would have been prior to that or throughout that process. But the fact that we've maintained that school readiness level above the national average, with our early years providers, 98% plus good or better with Ofsted, the collaboration alongside with social care, and even when Short Start didn't exist, there were still other embryotic, if you like, or legacy hub offers in different areas of Northumberland. And then obviously with the family hub offer that's currently in place, that's gone from strength to strength. I would commend anybody in this committee to, with prior appointment, visit some of your local family hubs, talk to the managers there, talk to the families that are accessing it. It's a super impressive set of arrangements in place that are great. And I truly expect that the knock-on effect of that will be even further improvements in the GLD, good level of development figure, to see us not just maintain our distance away from the national average, but to extend our gap with the national average.
Did you want to come in?
Just very quickly, just in terms of holidays and cared for children, we actually have a process in place, and we've had a few months now where we've been tightening that process and we've updated forms. So, you know, we do want those that care for our children to be able to have holidays, etc., and to take our children on holiday with them where they can. But the process that we have in place is that if they want to take them out of school to go on holiday, they do have to have the school's permission. The worker would then have to complete a form. Virtual school head would have to look at that form and agree it based on everybody else agreeing it within the care team, and then it ultimately comes to me for the final decision to be saying, actually, why is this? So there's still work that we're doing with our foster carers to understand the impact of taking children, but we've definitely got those processes in place, and they've been strengthened over the last few months as well.
So, Councillor Matheson, which is it?
It's Councillor Matheson, yeah.
Matheson, I almost got it right.
All right.
You've been waiting very diligently, but before I bring you in, I just want to say this is one of the huge advantages of facts. We can do quite granular interrogation into the report, but we've also got people who are experts from outside, who are not just, you know, councillors, but we've got our church representatives, we've got our trade union colleagues who are here today. So on that basis, you've waited diligently and patiently. Welcome to the committee, and please fire away with your first question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, it is my first time, and apologies if I ask stupid questions, but then we're always told, aren't we, at school, no question is that. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. But thank you very much for your very comprehensive report. I'm impressed, very impressed, and I was inspired too, so thank you. In fact, yeah, that's the disadvantage of being third, I suppose, is that, in fact, the question about COVID, I think you covered. I had a question about the impact of COVID on our on the children's service. So yes, I think you've already answered that. And I'm aware that my next question is a little bit is a little bit specific, especially as you said, Audrey, that you'd like it you see SEND as part of an integrated, streamlined approach. But I did pick out one part of the report, and I'm just curious what this is as part of the SEND. That you're busy with the rollout of a SEND Champions programme, and I just wondered what that is. In fact, and other than that, that really is it.
Yes, so as part of, I suppose, awareness throughout social care, one of the things that we're doing is about having experts in each department, so that people are fully aware of the process of not only an education, health and care plan, but also SEND support, so that we make sure that our workforce has the training and the understanding to support our community within SEND. And that might be early identification, it might be ensuring that they're pointed in the direction of our family hubs to ensure that there is local support and community support. So what we try to do within each department and children is upskill members of staff, which we are calling our SEND champions, so that they have that knowledge and understanding and can really support our workforce and and understanding that we have other champions within the service, so it might be a champion within care proceedings, for instance, or a champion within adoption processes, so that we have those key experts throughout the workforce that can support one another, and we could kind of class it as a bit of a learned friend. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Councillor Matheson. I just wanted to say that actually that is a model that we share across the whole of Children's and actually are sharing across the whole of NCC. So actually Neil just happens to be here today, but Neil worked across the whole of the council and all of our departments. So in finance and highways, not Children's, because we've talked about that, but across all of our service areas. For example, to get some internship champions. So supported internships. We wanted to have roles taught through our skills team. You will hear Neil talk about that. But Neil worked with each of our corporate departments to have somebody as the key link person. We immerse them in the subject area so that other colleagues can then come to them. And then that pull isn't always on children's services. So clearly the work that we're doing on a daily minute-by-minute basis and 7 days a week is around supporting some of our most vulnerable children, those that need us at the point of need, whether that's with social care, whether that's in a legal proceeding, whether that's with school, or actually whether that's with SEND. So the team have to be focused on that work, so it's really important that we share out the joy of having others with that level of expertise. And I'm sure it won't surprise you that that will come into my summary at the end of today as to how we can work together.
Great, thank you. I'm going to bring Mr. Bird in, our trade union representative, and then I'll bring in Councillor Spridell. I'll get pronunciations right. I'm terrible for this. Right, Mr. Bird, yours is easy.
Mr. Bird. Morning, colleagues. My name's Steve Bird. I am a school teacher, but very few children actually call me Mr. Bird. So, perhaps, Chair, with your consent, I might explain why I'm actually here today. So, although I work for a teachers' union, I actually have a sort of seat that represents all of the unions in Northumberland. So, my comment, Vicky, with a Y, is, and Vicky with an I for that matter, is around the report. And yes, it's great to hear Councillor Brenda Thompson say that we moved from requiring improvement right up to being outstanding. That's amazing and highly commendable. It's not the first time I've said this, colleagues, in these meetings. There's not enough recognition for the people at the chalk face or the cold face here. And outstanding achievements are the result of outstanding staff, and I would quite like that to appear more often in these reports. There is a comment on page 18, colleagues. It comes under health and well-being. And it's a statement that says staff well-being is high importance, but the comment after that, which should qualify the first bit, doesn't. It says the report highlights the dedication and support staff have for the children of Northumberland. That's without question, but that's not part of the well-being statement, I don't think. And finally, that's a general comment, and I had a bit of a wry smile when David commented in his previous comment that transition to school is much supported by really good teachers. And please could we include with that support staff, because many schools in Northumberland have brilliant in-house support teams to actually support these young people coming into education. Finally, a question. Under risk assessments, which was on page 17, it clearly identifies that staff have individual risk assessment. That's really good practice. However, there wouldn't be a risk assessment if there wasn't a risk to our staff. I just wondered, as a team, what work has been done, particularly about lone workers, and I know a lot of social workers are deemed to be lone workers. What work has been done around that area of their work? And if they haven't already done so, would the organisation consider the great work done by the Susie Lampu Trust around that and some training around that area. Chair, thank you.
So I'll come in on two things there, and I'm sure Vicky will join in as well. So some of it around Susie Lampling, I might not be able to answer. I only joined last September, so there might have been work before my time. But first and foremost, what I would want to say is we absolutely celebrate our frontline workers. We are very diligent in that and listening to and responding to our frontline workers, and we do that through our performance framework. So yesterday we did have what we would call a practice day, and we have practice days regularly where we go into different elements of the service, and it's not only a learning but it's a celebration of the work that they do. So yesterday I had the real honour of going out and meeting one of our care leavers, but I went alongside one of our PAs, so who supports our care leavers, and visited them in the home. I had the opportunity to observe that person in the front line and the work that she was doing and how she was talking to that young person, and I was really blown away. I had the opportunity to talk to that young person as well about their experiences, and then in the afternoon I also went out with 3 other young people as well, but alongside the team. So I had the real opportunity of being able to observe, of talking, of asking them how they are. You know, we've got in place you know, briefings that we send out that go out from Audrey, which celebrates what they're doing. Just recently, we've had the team, or 2 of our team members down in London because we were shortlisted for a national award as well. So we absolutely go above and beyond, I would say, in terms of making sure that our staff feel valued in the work that they're doing, because they do, as you rightly said, do tough work. You know, in terms of lone working, yes, that is discussed, and we know where all of our staff are going, when they are going, and we will actively monitoring. And if they're going out to something that we deem to be more of a risky situation, then we will assess that. We will determine, do we need to go out in pairs? Actually, if we're going out to this home visit, do we need a police officer to come with us, and how can we work together collaboratively? And we do that through our multi-agency safeguarding hub as well. So all of our staff have that level of care and support, and we will talk about risky scenarios because they get regular supervision, welfare supervision, but also case supervision as well, or supervision around the children that they're working with in the families to understand what are the risks and what's happening for them when they are actually out there working.
And then Vicky, do you want to come in with?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what Vicky's just advised. I mean, I've been a social worker in Northumberland on the front line, so I'm fully aware and briefed. What I would also add is how well connected we are in children's with our health and safety officers within Northumberland Council. They are really supportive in terms of if there is a risk to staff, how best they can advise in terms of the management of that, if there is a risky meeting that needs to take place, because we want that collaborative approach with our parents and carers, how best to hold that meeting in the safest way. In terms of the comment around the staff wellbeing, all of our staff have staff wellbeing plans which are reviewed on an annual basis or earlier if required. And I think it's really important we celebrate the success, as you advised. We have some outstanding staff in Northumberland that are so dedicated to our young people. And even just yesterday, I think the shortest term of a member of staff that I spoke to yesterday was 4.5 years. And I think that's just incredible that our young people have had that input from them workers. And I asked what keeps you in Northumberland, and they'd said the support that they get from their teams and their services around them. So I think it just echoes that the things such as risk assessments, wellbeing plans really work for our workforce.
So just before I bring Councillor Spradell in, I think it's probably a good opportunity. We're coming up at the end of term, and I know this happens in a lot of our scrutiny committees at FACS here, is none of the stuff which you are seeing presented here would happen without every single person who is working in a school, whether it's grounds maintenance, the kitchen staff, the cleaning staff, the teaching assistants, the SEND support staff, the parents, the carers, the young people themselves. They're the ones who sit and do the exams. This is probably a really good opportunity to put a message out, and I'm sure it's not just from the team here, but from everyone on the scrutiny committee, that without that army out there who day in, day out work tirelessly to support our young people, we wouldn't have the outcomes we have. And we shouldn't forget the army who were at the front line during COVID were our teaching staff and our support staff. So echo your point, and I'm sure that's something that, you know, we all absolutely support everything that happens in our school. As that famous JFK meeting when he met a cleaner at NASA, and he asked the cleaner what he does, and he says, "I'm responsible, sir, for putting a man on the moon." So, let's not go into the sexist thing, man, woman, person, but whatever. You get the message there. We're all responsible for getting a really, really good outcome for our young people. So, Councillor Sprittle, and then I'm happy, and then I'll quickly bring Suzanne in, and then I want to move progress. So, fire away, please.
Hi, I'm Roger Sprittle. My first time too. My wife and I are foster carers, and we deal mainly with Durham, Tyneside and Newcastle children. So I'm quite up to speed with EHCPs and SEN and so on. During the pandemic we did Google Classroom and homeschooling and so on. But my biggest concern, and it's been touched on a couple of times, was the lack of funding or the funding shortfall for SEN that we're facing and the impact that would have on the attendance figures. So my question after hearing other matters is how much would we need to increase the funding to meet the needs of Northumberland SEN, to move the dials, to improve that attendance, and how could we achieve it? My second question was, the government pilot scheme has just been rolled out, and local authorities were invited to apply for kinship care uplifts. And I know that Northumberland have put themselves forward. Have we got an update on that?
Not as yet, because I think the closing date was only 2 days ago for that that application.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've probably got a good few weeks yet to wait to find out, because they'll be evaluating everybody who's applied for that around the country and determining who's going to get it. So I would say probably at least a good 4 to 6 weeks before we even hear anything about that. But we have applied.
And then, David, I can bring you in on the substantive point around SEND.
So currently, the needs of learners with special educational needs in Northumberland typically are being met. The cost of delivering that currently is about £10 million more than the funding which is allocated. So you could say that needs are currently being met typically, and that costs about £60 million in Northumberland. The way that we've managed to meet that, where demand has outstripped the growth, is by going ultimately overdrawn, I suppose, in terms of spending more than the income that's coming in, but also through the efficiencies made right across the SEND system. And the SEND system is education, health, social care, all the partners, school staff going above and beyond for all types to ensure that needs continue to be met for young people, central teams working above and beyond. It's been a challenge, but there are multiple successes and significantly higher numbers of happy families whose residents where needs they know are being met and where they're attending, for example, excellent schools across Northumberland, both special and mainstream. But at the same time, they're also under a system that's under pressure. There will be some cracks. There are some families that are not as happy as we'd like them to be. There are some cases where we've been delayed with some timescales, which isn't really acceptable, and we're continuously refreshing how we deliver for SEND, special educational needs. The financial picture was very clearly articulated at Schools Forum yesterday. You'll see on Chronicle Live, and I'll compliment the Chronicle and the reporting from yesterday, because the article that's been written there is an excellent summary of the position we're in, and also how some of the mitigating factors that have been applied by everyone in the system in order to stretch that money as far as possible to make sure we are meeting needs for as many young people as possible. To go forwards to ensure that, for example, timescales, etc., are always met. It would be challenging for me to quote a figure of exactly what it would take to do that, but we absolutely welcome some reform in the system which will bring more resource to both relieve the pressure and also ensure that every single resident is getting what they need from the education system and the social care system and the healthcare system as well, all combined across Northumberland.
Thank you. David, can I bring in Guy, please?
Yeah, thank you, David. I think that's a really good question. And thank you for your service as being a foster carer as well. It's an incredibly important service that you provide. I think from the administration's point of view, this is one of the reasons why we've seen large investments of capital spend into our schools build programme. So at Amble, at Berwick, at in Alnwick as well, we've seen new special needs units being built. That does have an upfront cost when you look at the savings we make from not having to move those children around Northumberland and the general social benefit of them being able to stay within their communities. It's a worthwhile thing doing, but it does come at a large upfront cost. But for example, we've got children who move from Hexham to Blythe, from Hexham to Berwick, from Berwick to Blythe, and that is a huge cost to us on a revenue basis. So we're trying to drive those costs down. We do have the overspend of £10 million. Sounds like a lot of money, but some of the local authorities are in the hundreds of millions of pounds. We're watching what the government are going to announce very closely. If they do away with these special needs deficits, it's almost as if we've been punished for being quite diligent in our spending, and the councils that have just let it run away are going to get off with it. But we will watch closely what the government are proposing, but there does need to be some reform in the system.
I'm going to quickly bring Audrey in, then I'll move to Suzanne, and then we will then bring this section to a close and we'll move on to the next one. So Audrey, if I can bring you in, please.
Thank you. Just very briefly to say, David's quote is only the education piece of money that would be needed. So that is simply the high needs budget. There's then a health cost, which we wouldn't be in a position to try and calculate or even estimate. But just for clarity, that would simply be the education cost that we talked about in that money.
Thank you. Suzanne, I'll quickly bring you in and then we'll move forward.
Hopefully quick. Thank you, Vicky and Vicky. I did think it was, as Councillor Hill says, a very thorough and transparent piece of reporting. It was fabulous. And I've been here a while, so it's good to see improvements across this area. However, the improvement obviously isn't in the increase of children being sent out of boundary to be cared for or school spaces is still on the rise. I mean, and you do mention a rise in the number of cared for children. So my first question is granular. The rise in the cared for children, is that kind of, are you seeing it, is it more in the early years or is it an older age group that's happening? Is there a pattern to that, first of all? And secondly, you mentioned a sufficiency strategy. And is that just about building new homes, or is there more to it than that? Is that capacity within the school system for spaces as well?
So in terms of our children, the report went up till to December 2024, the end of December. So, you know, in terms of that rise of children in care, it has varied in terms of age groups. So if you looked at the data, it would probably tell you between about 4 and 8 year old, and then it would go to probably about your 11 to 13 year old as well. But if I look back to the year before, we've probably had a bit more of an increase in teenagers the year before as well. So, you know, whenever we're working, we're always looking at how do we support the cohorts that are coming through, and what does that look like, and how do we manage that? So year on year, there might be different patterns for a variety of different reasons, and some of that's around the complexity of what families are experiencing and how they're managing. So yes, we have. I think probably we've bucked the trend a little bit regionally in terms of the number of cared for children, where people started to see a greater increase of children coming into care since the pandemic, and we've remained fairly stable. We have gone up a bit, but we've also been this high in the past as well. So we're well aware of that. But the work that we're doing around family group conferencing, the reforms, redeveloping our edge of care service is really at looking at how do we actually do a lot more prevention so children don't come into our care in the first place or don't require our care as well. In terms of sufficiency strategy, when we talk about sufficiency in children's social care, it is very much around, do we have enough affordable homes for our children who are leaving our care? Do we have enough foster carers homes? And do we have enough of our own residential homes? But then actually, do we have enough of other provisions within Northumberland that are being provided that can meet our need? So every local authority that you'll go to, they'll see within children's social care that have a sufficiency strategy that focuses in on those areas. So we are currently in the processes of updating that sufficiency strategy. And one of the things that we really want to do is to work, as I say, on the corporate parenting element of it, but how do we work in tandem with our housing colleagues so they do their own sufficiency strategy? How do the two sufficiency strategies marry up, and how are we all pulling in the same direction as well? So we've had a lot of those conversations as well around how we can do that and what does that look like. So that sufficiency strategy that we've mentioned in there is absolutely focused on our cared for children and keeping them in Northumberland and in the homes that they need to be in. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, Vicky. We've covered that report. The recommendations are very clear. It's that we note the report. We've had quite a comprehensive deep dive into questioning on it, and we also noted Ofsted feedback from the self-evaluation as well. So thank you very much, officers, on that one. I'm proposing to move progress now to move to item number 5 on your agenda, which is the Northumberland Skills 2025 Ofsted Inspection Summary. David, if I can bring you in first, and then we'll move over to Neil. So if you can just quickly introduce yourself again, and then we'll take that report.
Morning, everybody. As it says on the sign, my name is David Street. I'm very privileged to hold the post of Director of Education, SEND and Skills. For those of you that are new to the committee, I'm just going to give hopefully a couple of minutes whistle-stop tour across the Directorate, and then I'll introduce Neil, that's going to talk about some Ofsted outcomes from our skills service. The Directorate holds a responsibility for the education of over 40,000 young people in Northumberland, and that would include all learners 0 to 18 and learners with special educational needs 0 to 25. We do that, we have a statutory responsibility to ensure sufficiency of educational delivery. And so there's lots of work on bricks and mortar and that side of the business, and also in and around studies of the future for birth rates in different areas of the county, special educational needs in different areas of the county, so that we can ensure that there is sufficient degrees of quality education for every Northumberland resident. We are aided in that through the deliverers, who are the schools. We have 168 schools, including all types and all varieties. We have over 275 early years providers who are supported through our early years team. We have our own post-16 FE type provider in Northumberland Skills, and you'll find some more information about them shortly. And we also obviously work very closely in partnership with Northumberland College. We also have some cross-border arrangements, which are absolutely appropriate. Some folk live nearer to a college in another local authority than ours, and it's absolutely appropriate, for example, that they should attend that, where it holds a course that's right for them. And so we obviously work very closely across our neighbouring local authorities, and more recently, particularly closely with 7 local authorities involved in the North East Combined Authority, and there'll be some additional funding coming into Northumberland through that route, which we're looking forward to developing with. Alongside all those education providers, we've got our other partners within health, social care. We have obviously excellent relationships, and wish to continue to form excellent relationships with councillors both in Northumberland and outside of Northumberland. All of our local MPs are regular contributes to viewpoints, etc. some scrutiny there as well, sometimes as well, which is always welcomed. But most importantly, actually, from the parents, from the residents and the young people themselves, in terms of we're constantly striving for feedback and interaction with those parties, so that where things are going well, that's great, they can be celebrated and extended across Northumberland. But if there are any places where it's not going well, we actually want to know about that as soon as humanly possible, so we can do some mitigation to work with that. So it is absolutely a partnership approach. And Steve quite correctly highlighted where reports today have thanked school staff collectively, but all those other partners I've mentioned, we need to continue to work and commend them for their work. Again, that was absolutely reflected in the Schools Forum meeting yesterday, where school staff in particular were highlighted. And again, I refer back to the Chronicle article, highlighted again in the local press, the best wishes that we had and thanks that we have for the folk who are delivering right across our education spectrum. This committee receives numerous reports from the Directorate, annual updates from early years, Northumberland skills, school place planning strategies, SEND, special educational needs, and also the annual report, which is a summary of all those actions. Today, the last meeting, there was the annual report for skills, it's our post-16 provider, but today we're going to get an update on an external viewpoint. So last meeting's self-evaluation was an internal viewpoint on where we were at from a skills perspective. But obviously the report you're about to hear and that you've read in your papers is that external viewpoint. We are continuously interacting with Ofsted and the DFE as key partners, both from a support and challenge perspective. Our schools Ofsted outcomes, again, commendations to all the school staff. Our good and better outcomes in the last, that have been judged in the last academic year are 100% good or better. Historically and currently our overall averages from our school outcomes is 95% good or better. Our early years providers are delivering a good or better at a 98% mark. There is some fantastic work in the education system across Northumberland, some really exceptional stuff going on, and not easily produced through the quality and the hard work of the staff that are involved. So, it's just an introduction to the world of education, SEND and skills, but more specifically, I'm going to pass on to Neil, who's one of the key players in our most recent Ofsted inspection for Northumberland skills.
Thank you, David, and good morning, everybody. So Neil Dorwood, Senior Manager for Education and Development, and actually I was the nominee for the Ofsted inspection, hence the author of the report and talking about it today. So we got the notification of inspection for Northumberland skills on Friday the 17th of January, the inspection being the following week, and it was to be a 4-day inspection, full inspection, and actually had a team of 6 inspectors, which is quite a big team for a small education provider, so it was going to be a very, very rigorous inspection, I would say. And it was to cover all of our different provision types, that including education programs for young people, provision for learners with high needs, adult learning, and also apprenticeships, because Northumberland Skills, our internal post-16 provider, does all of those provision areas, not in huge numbers like a large college does, but it does cover all of the provision types. Broadly, Ofsted summarised, first of all, what it's like to be a learner with Northumberland Skills within Northumberland County Council, and they commented that the teaching was a calm, welcoming, professional, supportive environment, that adults who studied with us, which is our biggest cohort, are prepared well for employment and with their work-related attitudes and behaviours. Attendance was recognised as a strength within our cohorts as well, whereby young people, learners with high needs, and our apprentices attend very well. Ofsted recognised some attendance barriers with some of our adult programmes, but they recognised that was because of the cohorts that we target as well, and that the leaders within Northumberland Skills put sufficient measures in place to support those adult learners who have attendance barriers still to achieve. They recognised our tutorial programme is very supportive of learners and that it helps them to become responsible and active citizens in the community. Our careers advice and guidance is recommended, as was pointed out, has been a very strong area. Safeguarding was particularly strong feedback on that, where our learners feel safe, but in the rare occurrence where there is an issue to report, they know very well how to report that and how to access support to overcome those problems. And many of our environments have practical training facilities within them, and it was recognised that within those practical environments, the working practices of our learners are following industry standards, safe operating procedures, use health and safety procedures and health and protection equipment incredibly well, so our learners are safe in our what are sometimes quite high-risk environments to train towards high-risk kind of sectors in Northumberland. In terms of the kind of more strategic level in what Northumberland Skills does well, they noted our clear strategic intent in terms of meeting local skills needs and local sectoral demands, and that is after a period of 3 or 4 years now of totally transforming what the service does and how it works. We have an incredibly strong, and this was one of the most significant points that Ofsted drew out, and we were pleased about it, an incredibly strong inequalities approach in what we do. Our education offer is aimed at those who particularly may not have come from a disadvantaged background or may not have engaged with the education system previously in the way that the majority do. So those from an economically inactive background, those with special educational needs, those who have been previously disengaged, that was our target audience, and that was well recognised by Ofsted that we are filling a gap there and doing something different to the more mainstream post-16 providers. They also commended the fact that we are in quite significant growth in the provision for those with special educational needs, in line with that growth and that need that we've already discussed today, and that those programmes for that community are delivering the skills that they need to progress as well. So it's not just that we're doing more in a very supportive way and in a very strategic way. One of the big things also recognised was the investment, and this comes from within the service and beyond within the council as well, in our very well-resourced kind of training centres, our machinery equipment, and examples were the construction training campus in Seg Hill, the welding and fabrication training centre in the Port of Blythe, and most recently the Energy Central Learning Hub in Blythe, which was delivered alongside our colleagues from our Economic Development and Growth Directorate. Our teaching and assessment strategies were recognised as an area of strength, and particularly, and this came was no surprise because the data was clear on it, but the attainment of learners within Northumberland Skills is incredibly good and significantly above national benchmarks as well, so that was good to get that reinforced. So a lot of good news in there, but there was, and to be fair, there was only 2 areas really identified as room for improvement in the report, which you may have seen. Firstly, and I think it's probably a hands up on this one, actually, I'll admit this one, that actually the destination data was not quite sufficiently robust for us to know that longitudinal impact of our education that we deliver. So in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, do we sufficiently know where people have ended up to really understand the impact that education's had? And that is something we take on board, and we're taking some measures to improve that, that qualitative and quantitative impact of education measurement. And the other point on that one for improvement was the sequencing of some of our curriculum, where the Ofsted point was we should be doing more theory and then blending into practical. I think there's some strong arguments where that does not actually fit, and I've seen it work successfully as well. But I think there were some examples where that specific scenario was seen, so it has found its way into the report, whether it's universally applied in education or not. There was some area for that for us to look into. The outcome of all of that was that across all of the 8 judgment areas within the education inspection framework, we got a good grade, which translates into our overall effectiveness as a service also being good as well, and our safeguarding was deemed as effective. I would say that within that, and having the detailed conversations with Ofsted, there is clearly pockets of outstanding behaviour, outstanding activity within that as well. And obviously our consistency is what we're aiming at now, at raising those areas up so we can have that consistency across all the areas for even better outcomes in the future at next Ofsted inspections. And I would probably just refer back to something that Mr. Bird said earlier as well around, you know, I may have been the nominee and I may be reading the report here today, but actually I'm not the team on the ground doing the work. And it's all of those individuals who are actually interfacing with the learners, have got the subject specialist skills and put the strategy into practice that are actually having the impact. So that applies equally to this service area within the council as well. Any questions? Very welcome.
I'm just going to bring Audrey in, and then I'll bring Guy in, then I'm going to open it to the floor. So, Audrey, if you can just...
Thank you, Chair. This is a really good outcome, and to some extent disappointing that there wasn't a greater flavour of outstanding in there. Some of the examples that Ofsted were able to see on the ground, as they would do in our ILACS inspection or any in-school inspections or any of our childcare inspections that happen on a daily basis in Northumberland, inspectors would always talk to children, young people, and particularly in skills. There were examples at our construction site where they spoke to young people who hadn't attended school for 2 years, and I picked this point up as a result of the earlier question around attendance and does that impact. Mr Hodgson raised that rightly earlier. So actually they spoke to a young person who hadn't attended school for 2 years. We worked through cross-service organisation. They came to the construction campus and the inspector actually correlated what the young person said with our data, because the young person said, I've been here every day and I've got 100% attendance. And the query was, 2 years to 100%, is that real? But actually, the data system, which is a proprietary system, not a spreadsheet, it is something that is used throughout the post-16 sector across the country. And that proof was able to be evidenced on screen with several people. So this service has transformed in the last 5 years. It's having the right people and understanding the needs of a large rural county such as Northumberland, doing the very best they can for as many residents as we can. So most of our young people who perhaps would have become NEET, not in education, employment or training previously, we see more of those young people accessing this service as well as accessing our local FE college, and we've made a significant difference around the number of people who no longer leave Northumberland for their post-16 training. But make no bones about this, this is transformational in terms of the work. I am certain that Councillor Rennan-Thompson will want to say something around investment, but the ability to work with industry and with our services, with our young people, and co-produce what is needed to get them into the employment for the investments coming into Northumberland is core to this service mission. Thank you.
Guy, if I can bring you in.
Yes, thank you. I mean, you're probably thinking, oh, we've heard about this already before because the inspection was quite a while ago, but because of the election and various other things, this is why it's coming to facts today. So if there is a lovely article in the Chronicle about this, it's probably the 10th one that's been written. But it is a fantastic bit of work. You've heard already about what we're doing in early years. Well, this is the other end of the spectrum. And it is our ambition to bring fantastic, well-paid, new industry, new jobs into Northumberland. But if those jobs aren't being filled by local Northumberland young people, then it was a complete waste of time. You know, we need to get our own workforce upskilled and into well-paid jobs. We work very closely with Northumberland College. You know, we facilitated the new build in Ashington with the land and the money and so on. But the college aren't everywhere, you know, and they're very good at some things, but there are some parts of the county where they're non-existent. So a few years ago, Neil did the most fantastic bit of work, which you'll be able to find online, where we mapped all the businesses in the county, we mapped all the further education providers in the county, put it on a big map and a big spreadsheet, and then we could point and say, right, there's no one there, that's where we need to be. There's no one there, that's where we need to be. And from that, we've got a welding centre in Blythe, we've got a construction centre in Seg Hill, we've got a site for learners with additional needs in Alnwick. So the service does fantastic work. It's just part of the whole bundle of children's services where we've got, you know, good news stories, but there's always more to do. It would have been nice to get that outstanding rating instead of just a good rating, and I'm sure we will next time.
Right, so I'm going to open it up. So I'll start with Suzanne first, because the other way around, I'll bring Mr Hodgson in. So Suzanne.
Thanks, Neil. I'm always impressed with the work of the skills sector here. I would like it more rolled out towards the west, because I do think there's huge gaps in building and construction in the west that need filling. So if you could bring that way, that would be brilliant. You mentioned destinations and pathways as being sort of a weak spot, and it was just a kind of note. Those stories and testimonials are obviously crucial to the work that you do, and mapping those out, I think, is absolutely essential. And I would say, I mean, do you work on a kind of alumni model? Like, so, for example, I'm an alumni of Newcastle University, and they send me sort of newsletters and occasionally surveys as to where I am, and then they will bring people in if they need to speak to other students to inspire them. Do you do kind of anything to do around that?
I think that's
feedback afterwards.
That's a good question, and I think I would have to answer that as no right now, and that's part of what we need to do differently. I think what we do is at the end of a course, we check what people have applied for, we check what their aspirations are. That's not enough. We need that alumni longer term, because that is the true impact of that education. If they leave us and they enter an apprenticeship, are they successful in that apprenticeship 12 months down the line? I think we need to look further and have that more of an alumni approach and tracking that. Then we'll truly know more deeply the true impact of the education we deliver. We have a lot of great testimonials that come out of the learners who've been with us, but it's not far enough in the future to know how it's been sustained.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hodgson, then I've got Georgina Hill.
Just a couple of things. Well done, Neil. I think this adds to it, the narrative, doesn't it? The positive picture we've got in Northumberland, so brilliant. Well done. It was just a clarification. I noticed on the grades, obviously it has safeguarding as effective or ineffective. Does that hinge on whether the whole inspection ends up being good overall if you didn't get that effective grade for safeguarding? Is it?
That is absolutely grade limiting. If your safeguarding isn't effective, you will not reach a good outcome.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely the case.
So
yes.
well done. Yeah. And the other thing as well, just picking up your point, Guy, there, what happens if you had ambitions to be a welder but you lived in Bellingham?
Yes, I think that is the challenge that we are forever hearing in Northumberland, actually. And I think with that one, it's about how we access our post-16 transport system.
That's what I was just thinking, because I mean, yeah.
Yes, we've got, 5,000 square kilometres, and we're investing in individual sites in sectorially specific areas with the right skills for the right trades for those areas. Accessing them further away is a challenge.
It must be a nightmare.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. Although I would say as well that we have some young people that are getting out of bed super early in the morning, always there, on time, and they are travelling the journeys as they would have to once they reach employment, and that is actually part of that readiness for employment, to actually have that.
I was just wondering, just going through my head when you mentioned that. I mean, is there some sort of hostel accommodation possibly available? You know, for somebody, I mean, if you're coming from Bellingham to Blythe, that's virtually an impossible journey to do on a daily basis. So I'm just wondering whether part of your plans would be, right, these are our centres, and, I mean, even, dare I say, basic accommodation that would alleviate that pressure, but at the same time enable you to say, well, that's the course for me, and it might be 6 months or whatever, and have that sort of basic accommodation.
I think there's two factors in the answer to that question. One of them, and this is from experience of working in the education system post-16 in the past, is that if you were talking about older apprentices, adult trainees, professional education training on a commercial basis with an organisation, that's easy because you make relationships with local commercial hotels, for example. You make relationships with other local residential provision where it exists. In terms of a small education provider, on the other hand, doing something like that for young people, that in itself, if you had that residential provision, that would be Ofsted inspected and have a line of governance over it as well. So that would turn into an entirely different part of the organisation that comes with great expense and complexity. And for a tiny service like we do some very niche things with some communities who need something slightly different, but these are small areas of provision, and I think at this point in time we're probably not quite there with justifying having a residential accommodation. Northumberland College do have some residential accommodation, I would add, within their portfolio, and has been Ofsted inspected, as you would anticipated, but I think that's because they have the scale to accommodate that within their business.
Very valid questions. Georgina Hill.
Thank you. Well, the picture's pretty good. I like what Guy and Audrey said about not being complacent, though. Well, that's what you're implying, because just to mix up the jargon, but we should be looking, if it's not outstanding, it does require improvement to get there. One commentary I did wonder was, hope there isn't complacency in, is it, saying that careers advice is very good. I mean, generally with careers advice, it's evidently so important, and generally there's a lot of room for improvement and across the board for provision. So just to re-emphasise, I hope in that area particularly there isn't any complacency. Just to pick up on the point that's been touched on about locations, do you have, am I right in saying, do my quick maths, about 729 learners? Do you have any breakdown of where they are? How many is in each part? You do have? Yeah. Well, can we see that, and does that, and I'm presuming that it does paint a picture that certain areas are much more, and then the whole of Northumberland and the more rural areas and the northern areas, because I don't, and it's about engagement, because to be perfectly honest, when I see Northumberland skills, it's that, it's part and parcel of what you should do, but it is a bit of that unimaginative, let's rock up and put a stand up at when the academy's in Berwick, academy's doing something, and I think engagement should be a lot more imaginative than, that sort of activity.
So yes, Councillor Hill, we'll be able to do both. We'll be able to map the current locations that students attend, but we'll also be able to do their home postcode, so we'll be able to do an overlay of both. So I'm happy to do that piece of work. That's easily drawable. In terms of careers advice, just to pick up on that, so there is some elements within the delivery opportunity and offer within Northumberland Skills. So if you took, for example, our construction centre, our supported internships, or indeed our engineering, after every module with the engineering, there is a student celebration that involves an employer who comes in, and they do that engagement with our young people are from day one being taught knowledge, skills and behaviours ready for the workforce. That's the curriculum model in our post-16 skills provision. It is very strong, ahead of the game in terms of how we operate, and very employer focused, so that we can think about where we get our young people to, whether they are on an entry-level programme or a level 3 apprenticeship programme or a higher apprenticeship. That model, there's a core to it all of the way, so really, really important. What was the last piece you talked about? Oh, engagement, sorry. So actually, just last Saturday, for the last few Saturdays at each of our centres, there have been what we call taster sessions, and that's targeting our young people at year 11 who are yet undecided as to what to do, where to go post-16. It may be that they want to go to their school sixth form and do A-levels. It may be, as you would do on a university course, that you think about an insurance choice. And it may be, well, if I don't quite get the grades, or actually if I think about I might change direction, they have the opportunity to come and have a go at our engineering, our construction centres, all of our, and they have been packed out for months. So yes, you'll see the two-dimensional social media around Northumberland Skills, and we probably do, turn up with pull-up stands and a table and a pen to hand out and share. But actually, the most important bit is hearing from our young people who are in the services, back to the alumni that Councillor Fairless-Aitken talked about. So there is nothing more powerful than a young person who has got a job, I'm going to say, in Blythe or in Prudhoe in some of our engineering, or indeed in Wooler or Bellingham in our engineering firms, rocking up in the boiler suit with the name of the company on the back and talking to our future workforce. That's the most powerful opportunity that we can use. I will talk to you later about, you're all welcome to come and visit our centres and see what that looks like. And just earlier this week, Councillor Ball visited Blythe and our welding and engineering centres. And she said, it's not what I thought it was. So I think our work is to continually debunk and demystify what we do in skills. There is a definite perception. I still face it in the council. People say, well, you do this and you do that. And I say to the team, no, they don't. That's absolutely not what the team do in any way, shape or form. So an open invitation, and I'll say it again in a wee while. But it is a really valid point. And, you know, I won't spend the limited monies that we get through our skills service on a significant advertising or marketing or branding campaign. It is reputational that we want to really endorse and build.
Just a quick point on that. I mean, the point is if anyone had said, oh, Craig's advice is really good, just to push back on that, because, as I say, the importance and the weakness in it. You know, obviously, if you had people training to go into construction, then it's probably not difficult to get employees to thinking this is a shortage, great, we've got a future workplace incoming. But I think it's that key point, as you mentioned as well, when lots of children don't know what they want to do, and to get them in that and talk really about what all the opportunities are. And I do find still quite a lot of you know, parents and young people I speak to who they're not academic and they want to earn. And for some reason, you mention apprentice is a really good option you can start. And for some reason, it seems quite difficult to sell. I don't know why it is, and it shouldn't be. So are we doing enough? There seems to be sometimes a bit of a pushback. I don't know if it's about myths or whatever, yeah. But it is such a good opportunity.
It is.
And yeah.
I would say I can't change the world.
Yeah.
I've spent most of my career has been in FE and HE before coming to Northumberland, and apprenticeships have been the biggest myth. Everybody misunderstands them. Everybody at every level misunderstands apprenticeships. There was a long time where it was seen as, well, it was, you know, if you couldn't do very well, do an apprenticeship. Actually, it's quite the reverse. Apprenticeships are hard, tough, and hard won, actually. And now we're seeing a resurgence post-COVID. COVID had a significant impact on the businesses and their ability to have a resurgence and recruit apprentices. We are seeing some improvement in terms of that, so there are not as many out there. They are really valuable ways, and employers should really value apprenticeships. So I think part of the issue is you're called an apprentice, you should just be called an employee.
I'm going to bring Guy in, then I'll bring Suzanne in, and then we'll move progress. So, Guy.
Thanks, Chair. Two of the last speakers mentioned about locations of services, and I would love to have an all singing, all dancing post-16 centre in every market town in the county, but without that critical mass of young people wanting to do a particular course, you can't. It just doesn't make financial sense. Which is why, to me, I think our free post-16 transport policy is so important. You know, the council prior to 2017 withdrew that service, so every learner post-16 to get to high school or get to college had to pay. And for some families, that is a very prohibitive cost, which is why we have chosen to keep the free post-16 transport, even though it is an incredibly expensive cost to the council. And when people say, oh, how can the council save money? Because it's not a statutory service. It's one of the first things that people say, oh, do away with your post-16 transport. But in such a large rural county, I think it's incredibly important that we keep that.
Suzanne, quickly bring in.
It was just to sort of follow up on what Councillor Hill was saying about, you know, when do you get that interest in apprenticeships in? And I noticed that I think the schools are now rolling careers advice down to year 7 now, which is refreshing, because you've got to come in way before year 11 to open up their minds to these possibilities. I remember the local school running sort of field trips actually that young to Port of Blythe and places, and taking the kids up there to see the sort of skills in action and inspiring them very early. So I'm pleased that that's a just to follow up on what Councillor Evan Thompson said about the post-16 offer on the bus service. Often it's great that is there, and it should be. But often in the west we have to come through Newcastle, and that's really hard to get. You can't get a direct bus through, so those cards still don't join up, which is really frustrating. And I know there was a business case for the pot card on the Queen Elizabeth line, but there's not been made a sort of business case made for the west. for getting into Newcastle and back out, whether that's for schools, training, hospitals, everything else, that needs to be really honed up for the new authority, I think.
I have that, happy to raise that with the Mayor.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. And on that point of transport, there was, I think in January, the Mayor of the Combined Authority had a consultation on public transport. Glenn, I think, leader of the council, leads on rural issues at the Combined Authority. So that Guy will absolutely make sure this is on his radar. But part of that potential transition is around looking at how public transport operates and who operates it. So it may well be that there is better joined up thinking going on here. So what I wanted to do is just, there's two questions, and it links that I have. One links with that whole apprenticeship idea, and I'm really curious. I know we're looking at this Ofsted report here, but I'm just really curious if you can just give us a quick flavour of the business links that we have with Northumberland Skills, because obviously it's that progression, that transition from learning to earning, which I'm keen to know about. And then the other one is, just putting it out there, was there anything when you had the inspection feedback where you thought, crikey, I didn't know that? Was there any shock which came out of it? So deal with the first one, then you can take the last one.
Business links, well, as I mentioned in the kind of summary of the report, were mentioned as a really strong point within the inspection. I think some of that comes from, as one example, we have in the construction campus a really strong relationship with British Gypsum and all of their interior systems work that they do in supply and manufacture in the UK. They actually provide us with all of the materials for teaching as part of that relationship, and as part of that as well, they inform our curriculum, how we design that, not just meet the needs of the workforce now using the technologies in construction right now, but equally what's around the corner, because they're the manufacturer, they've got things in the pipeline and design which will be the future of construction activity. We get that intelligence early, so that's a good one about strategic relationship. But of course, being an apprenticeship training provider as well, we use construction as an example to continue on with that. We have relationships as well with the local small businesses that have, 2, 3, 4 employees, a van or two, and actually, we'll have that audience and a kind of an apprenticeship relationship so we can supply the workforce in that kind of sort of grassroots level. So that's a couple of different aspects. Moving over to the engineering side, we have very strong relationships again in welding fabrication, in putting apprentices into the workforce in Northumberland and beyond, and equally within particularly Energy Central, where the first year of operation in that engine sort of maintenance and operations engineering type of activity. We've got a lot of very rapid relationships through the Energy Central network, the port network, and those employees have got a presence within the facility. They influence the curriculum, and again, they know our learners are there. They're often in work experience, so they can actually try those learners. And they actually get, when they do that, a young person who is a cultural fit for their organisation because they've tried them before they've actually employed them. We can get the right person for the right employer. And that is how you have a successful transition from full-time education to apprenticeship that works.
And the Ofsted? Was there a shock?
I don't think there was. We spent a lot of time waiting for this call. And when you've got a lot of time on your hands, you tend to pick through the detail, and that we did. So the fact that we didn't resolve the destination thing was almost like it wasn't that much of a shock, but why hadn't we done that? So it was more of a bit of a realisation that we could have done more there, and that was the thing that for me was a learning point, not necessarily a shock, because we pretty much agreed with everything.
What I'm getting at is this potentially proves the robustness of our self-assessment model.
I'd say so, yes.
Great. Okay. Right. There we go. Right. So, go on. Fire away.
Very last point there. You've mentioned about apprenticeships being the poor relation. Yeah. It's just a but right. Just a reflection there. I've worked across Europe with various departments of education, and what they haven't done is tinker with their education system like we have. In other words, probably if you went back to the 1970s, there probably wasn't a great deal of difference in terms of the route through to apprenticeships. But because we've continued to tinker with our education system, The apprenticeship approach has been pushed back and back and back, but not in Europe. In other words, the recognition of an apprenticeship route and an academic route is seen as equal. And they've got 30, 40, 50 years of what Neil's trying to do now. We're playing catch up. And it's also economy of scale, which is what Guy was talking about. Here we are in a small authority, really, in terms of population, trying to meet the needs of post-16. And we're struggling. We're under financial pressure and so on. And yet Europe continues, because of their established organisation in terms of this, the routes that they have through schools, to continue to do. And we're just constantly playing catch-up.
Can I bring a little bit of personal experience to that? I was an apprentice when I left school. I was an engineer when I left school. And I didn't know this at the time, but looking back, I worked for a small organisation, 40, 50 employees. Probably typically at any one point in time, 10 to 15% of the workforce were apprentices. People came and went. It was resilient though, because it had that new blood and it had that income of new staff at all times and had sufficient staff to train those new staff, and that model worked. When I look back, I now realise, not at the time, but I realised that they were getting that right, and not enough organisations do that any longer. But the ones that you see that still do seem to thrive and are resilient. So I think you're exactly right that it's probably lost the respect it should have, the apprenticeship route, and as a result it's not got the same uptake as it should have. From my point of view, I've got 2 children that are still at school age, but I absolutely hold the apprenticeship route because of my background at the same level as a university route, and would not recommend one over the other. It's about what's right, but massive advocate for apprenticeships.
Open the can of worms here, Audrey.
I know.
And then I'll bring Councillor Jackson and then I'll bring Audrey.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, because I am also, you mentioned the 70s, I was an apprentice in the 70s, but it was in the army. And that army set my foundation up for my entire career. And although I didn't follow the academic route, I vastly exceeded the possibilities in my career on the basis of that apprenticeship. It really did a great start in life. So, yeah.
Audrey, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Europe is fascinating, and they have a very much focused education system that is around technical skills and working with employers. Germany and Scandinavia are the leaders in that, some of the models there. And having both Neil and I worked with Siemens previously, PLC, visited how they operate in Germany and implemented some of that here. So understanding some of that has helped us to inform where we take the skills service here. We're a relatively small player in the grand scheme of things, but it's even more important. And when you think about the 2 reports that we've had today, so you've had our social care self-assessment, and actually that very much focuses on our statutory work for those who are some of our most vulnerable children in Northumberland. Our skills service are framed around how they are able to support more of those children and even up, balance, narrow the gap even more quickly for those children and actually accelerate that. And so that work with our employers, Neil leads the SEND Employer Forum, so just bringing in our SEND. This is not just about our cared for children, it's for all of our statutory responsibilities. So our skills service might be towards the end of the line in our education, but actually our next step is, and I'm thinking about our work in Berwick Councillor Hill, how do we help more of our young people go beyond our skills service and work with partners into higher education as well? And that's really important in some of our longer term thinking. I think the term for a long time has been in and out of favour is lifelong learning, but how do we help adults to retrain at various stages in career or career changes? How do we help those families who perhaps have never gone into higher education before in their life, or any of the previous generations? How do we help them do that? And they're our next steps, particularly with some of our new development opportunities, location-based, and it's thinking about how we do that, because potentially that critical mass issue around enough people to make it viable. Actually, it's enough people to make it educationally viable as well. So to come together to understand how you work and have that curiosity in a group of individuals rather than one person or two people, that's equally as important as being viable to have the building, the kit, the equipment. In 2025 and beyond, we are already thinking about the ways we can do that without necessarily having a physical building that's equipped with all of the ways. We've got that kit in other parts of the county, and that can be a mixed model of operating. I think we used Bellingham. Somebody used Bellingham earlier, didn't you? Yes. So actually we could do something in Bellingham, and there could be an option to access some of the physical training on site that could be done not every day of the week, but there could be a place-based training aspect that's done on site there. We are already working on those models. So we'll look forward to bringing that to you in future facts when we're there.
Great. Thank you for that. So we've had a fairly comprehensive dive into the Northumberland skills, and I'm sure Neil and the team have been listening to the comments. So we've noted the report. So, and please pass on thanks to everyone and Neil for the work which has been done there. We're now moving on to item number 6 on the agenda this morning. So I'm going to introduce Rebecca Greeley, who's our scrutiny officer, who's going to take us through 2 sections. One is the forward plan, and the other one is the overview and scrutiny work programme. And I'll be bringing Audrey in on a bit of that as well. But Rebecca, can you just cover the forward plan and the context, what the forward plan is about?
Of course, yeah. Thank you, Chair. It's just to highlight that the forward plan has all recent decisions by Cabinet in it, and it also shows you business that will be going to Cabinet in the next couple of meetings. So it's just for you to look over, see if there's anything of relevance that would fit our remit that you would like to bring in to our scrutiny. And it's just to highlight that we have had a recent chairs group meeting, and we're looking to create an improved forward plan, hopefully where we can look at possible pre-scrutiny as well as post-scrutiny.
Absolutely. And then if we can take us through the overview and scrutiny work programme,
Yep.
and then I'll bring Audrey in after you've done that overview.
Could
and
I
we have a
get the slide clicker, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So the work programme and the forward plan are both standard items in our agenda. You'll see them again and again. The work programme, it sets out what we've got coming up in our committee meetings over the next couple of months. It is a working document, so things can be added, things can be dependent on priorities of the committee. It's not in stone. We can change everything. And it also has a monitoring report on it, which I've left last year's monitoring report on so that you can see what we looked at last year, because I know we have quite a few new members. I've also created a little infographic presentation, and I'll just go through it quickly to show you what we looked at last year, just to give you a flavour of what our committee kind of covers. So we meet bi-monthly. So in May last year, we looked at the school transport review update. So those recommendations and actions for the review were approved by Cabinet in 2022, and a report was brought to our committee just to give an update on the recommendations and actions, and to see kind of how they were progressing. We also looked at family hubs, which we've mentioned today. So that was a committee request, so a member from the committee asked for it to come, and we looked at the work undertaken through the family hubs. And also following the discussion, we as a committee agreed to do a task and finish group to look into it a bit more in depth, focusing on the male participation for carers and fathers. And then that task and finish group reported to us in our March meeting. So in September, we looked at the reports and findings of the inspection of local authority children's services in May 2024. So that we received a report on the findings from Ofsted inspection that was taken in May 2024, and we will possibly receive further updates on that and how it's kind of implemented. The free school meal provision in Northumberland, that looked at the new implementation of a auto-enrolment system, and it hadn't actually taken place yet, so it might be that we bring back a review of that. And a local government and social care ombudsman report was brought to committee for the members to discuss, to see that they were satisfied with appropriate learnings and actions. November, we got an annual representations report. It provided feedback from complaints, compliments and other general inquiries that are submitted to the Children's Services and those that are referred to the local government and social care ombudsman. We also received the report from the Care Proceedings and Public Law Outline, the annual report. So that shares the performance and within the pre-proceedings and care proceedings between July 2023 and July 2024. And we also received in November a report of the school improvement team, which gave assurances as to the work related to school improvement across Northumberland. And then January was quite a big meeting. So we had the Northumberland Children and Adult Safeguarding Partnership annual report. And that gave us an overview of the work done by the Council in driving successful partnerships, working in respect of safeguarding. We also had the Northumberland Skills Annual Self-Assessment Report and the School Organisation Plan. So that allowed us to comment on it prior to it being circulated to all schools and academies. And then still in January, we also had the Education Send and Skills Annual Report, which went to Cabinet and then came here, and it was for us to consider the information and allow any further comments. And then Send Capacity and Place Planning Strategy. The committee considered the refresh strategy and updated data, and we will continue to receive updates on the challenges and increases of the number of pupils with EHCPs and the requirement for additional SEND capacity. And then in March, which was our final meeting of that year, we had the Virtual School Head Teacher Annual Report, we had the Early Help Annual Report, and we had the Annual Report of the Children's Principal Social Worker. And we also received our report from the Task and Finish group that had previously investigated the family hubs from the earlier reports.
Right.
And it was just to say, if you felt enthused by any of them, you can go and watch the meetings. They're all recorded and are on our YouTube channel, and the minutes and agendas are also on ModGov. And it's just to say that the work programme is the committees. So if you have anything that you'd like to raise, please do get in contact with myself or with Wayne.
And again, it's important to note that this scrutiny committee is quite unique because we have external members. We're also unique in that there are reports that we have to, by law, take. But the bit that's over to you is actually saying what you want to have on this programme. So it's your committee, please get in contact with myself and Rebecca and we'll have a look at it. And in some cases, the request is it's an information item. It doesn't need a deep dive. In some cases, it will become a scrutiny item. And in other cases, we have the ability to do a task and finish. We did a highly successful task and finish a couple of years ago, which was around school exclusions, where we brought in external partners, otherwise known as head teachers, and we brought them in and we listened to the best, and we also spoke to some of the schools which had an opportunity to improve. And from that, we had a plan, and that plan paid dividends because the exclusions decreased. So there is an impact to everything you do, because you don't want to be sitting here for a couple of hours going, yeah, reading a report. I want you sitting here so you think you've made a difference and have made a difference to our communities. So, again, statutory reports we can't get out of, we'll take them, and they're actually really informative. But the work programme is yours. You own it. liaise with myself and Rebecca, and it'll either be a report, an information item, or potentially a work programme, or indeed it might be a conversation with Audrey and the team because it's individual clarification. But again, the one thing I'd say to you, big picture, not just Bellingham, not just Hexham. Hexham, lovely though it is, it's not as nice as Cramlington. But it's about the big picture, the bit. Oh, we'll have a battle afterwards, and don't even go about Berwick, right? So anyway, well, I'll give you that. Georgina, please, Mrs. Berwick.
Thank you. There you go. Yeah, I mean, we did have a conversation, didn't we, about and speaking of areas for improvement, like careers advices in councils, always an area for improvement, scrutiny, and particularly when we have a cabinet model, and particularly when we have a minority administration, it's really important for the decision-making process that members have an input. And on that, we talked about the forward plan, and there is a vagueness in that. I know you're going to say there's sometimes commercial sensitivity, and sometimes it has to go through the capital working group. But there is a vagueness there, particularly around the cap, which is of huge interest to members, what capital projects are being discussed. And just on the specific work programme, Cabinet, I believe the new school in Berwick, very importantly, is coming to Cabinet in September. There's been an open day looking at options. There's obviously still a bit of detail to work up, but it all seems quite positive. But it would be sensible for this committee to have their input before it went to Cabinet. Is that the plan? Because looking at this, it doesn't look as if it is the plan, or looks as if there's a bit of flexibility that could be slotted in, but doesn't look definite, and I think it should.
From memory, I think Cabinet is the 2nd of September.
Yeah. Right.
And so there won't be a scrutiny before that, but we could bring the report and share that.
Well, you see, I mean, that is proves a bigger point that I've been making, that something is important like that, the new school, and the idea is not to, of course, and particularly something that is generally positive, to have a go at the Cabinet, if you like, but it's improve the decision making, focus on the detail before it goes to Cabinet. That's the whole point of scrutiny. That worries me, and it's not like this has just suddenly turned up.
So you know from our chairs group, Georgina, that we've obviously had we're looking at how we reframe this. So Guy, I'll bring in, because you're probably more versed on this than myself, but the Cabinet report, I understand, is a big picture. It's the indicative costing. It is not the granular detail of where a door will be and where exit to a play area will be. It is an overview of the principle of the build. So unless you tell me otherwise, but the engagement event which has taken place in Berwick, which was it last week, I think it was?
Wednesday.
And there's been ongoing work with others around that. So I don't know necessarily what we would bring to the table. I think
well, we could bring what was at the, and it was really useful, and it's genuinely, this is what I'm saying about improving the decision-making process. Obviously, I know the area, listening to people and all the input and people educate. I'd be keen to hear what people in Hexham who've had new schools and get that. It just, again, it just improves the decision-making process, and it seems that for all round, to benefit everyone, the natural thing that it would go to scrutiny and then Cabinet.
Guy, did you want to comment on that? Because my view is that having been on Cabinet and had reports on school bills, it is the principle of and the indicative cost of, rather than the granular detail of the actually commissioning.
They're making specific decisions.
We school bills in the past used to come to fax, but then everything was changed from to more post scrutiny than pre scrutiny. So I don't see what.
And there hits the nail on a big head, frankly.
There should be an opportunity for it to come to fax at some point, but it won't. I don't think this is the point. Maybe when the planning application's going in or something like that.
That's the granular. So what I don't want to have happen, because the date of the next meeting is 4th of September. The Cabinet is 2nd of September. What I do not want to do is park this. So a report to Cabinet which basically says, are we going to build a new school in Berwick? Yeah, we are. How much is it roughly going to cost? This. How many pupils roughly? It's this. I don't want that delayed, because that 2 or 3 month delay is going to have a really negative impact on when the ultimate build is done.
But I presume you're picking your preferred option, which the input has been in the public meeting, and then the round of input should be on this scrutiny.
So what I would say is, I think the opportunity lies in after the report, the indicative decisions being made by Cabinet for us to have a detailed look at that and what the principles are around it. I would suggest that may well be otherwise we are delaying this massively.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, schemes do change throughout the progression of them, so I wouldn't see a problem with facts having a chance.
And what I can also tell you, having been involved in the Hexham build and a couple of others, when I was doing what Guy does now, there are project groups of which elected members were on, and there were a number of modifications, I can tell you, to QE from what came to the Cabinet that I sat on to what the working group did to what the eventual build was, including entry points, number of exits, you name it. So whatever goes to Cabinet is not set in tablets of stone. There will be modifications. There will always be an opportunity to look and improve. But I think what's really important is that we drive that meeting in September, because that needs to happen. And you know what? You just need to trust us on this. We want the school to happen, and we need it to happen.
That's not the point.
We'll
it's just a really proving point as made about scrutiny and getting rid of pre-scrutiny. This is such a good case in point to have the input. Obviously, there's still more detail to work out where doors are and so on, but it's some broad, important options that were shown to the public last week that should quite evidently come here before they go to Cabinet.
So what I'll do is I'll give you an assurance, and I'm sure Guy will. The report will go to Cabinet, which will give the green light to make things happen. There will be a project group which will be set up. Sue Aviston, her team will be on there. Elected members will be on it. That will look at the granular detail, working with the contractor, whoever that may be, in order to deliver it. Guy comes to these meetings regularly. He'll link in. You will have ample opportunity if there was anything which you feel uneasy about or think needs improving or hasn't been addressed, to sit up within the project board. And also I will categorically make sure that it comes here to facts as well. So as a cast iron assurance, you will get a fantastic school for Berwick, as we have delivered in Hexham, as we have and will be delivering in Astley, as we have done in other parts of this county as well. Yeah. Okay, good. Audrey, can I bring... Oh, I've got Veronica in the back. Hello, Veronica.
I don't really want to extend this conversation, but if I remember rightly, a few years back, the administration did ask the LGA to come in and do a report on how we were doing. And one of the recommendations was that we should not be concentrating on pre-scrutiny, that wasn't necessary, and we were bringing that rather than go into particular issues, which is what we should have been doing. So I just feel that, that was the recommendation, and now we look like we're discussing whether we should go back to doing pre-scrutiny.
And just on that point, that's one of the reasons why, looking at the work programme, we can identify areas of which we have an interest, which may help inform decision making. So that's bolted on. Audrey, can I bring you in? Because I know you wanted to touch on a couple of things.
You can. Thank you, Chair. So I think I said very early in the meeting that I was really keen for you all to be fully informed and keep you up to date and keep you up to speed. For new members, you might be hearing lots of new information, lots of new language, and we'd want to make sure that we can help you with that. So as a team, and the rest of the team who are not here at the moment, we will be doing some children's services immersion events for all members elected in May. But we would like to give you more. We will probably only do 2-hour slots. So over the year, I don't want to do it all in one go. It's not a download, but over time, we'd like to do more. Chair, Councillor Daly mentioned earlier about visits, and you would be very welcome to come out to our family hubs, to our skills centres, to any of our childcare, early years, schools, come out and meet the teams, absolutely everybody across children's. At any point, it doesn't need to be en masse. Please just contact me and we'll make sure that happens. So that's an open invitation to you all. You've heard from Rebecca the current, or what we've done in the past in terms of our work plan. I would call that our corporate rhythm for children, so the things that we absolutely have to report. And then there are some particular things that are around policies and changes that often we then share with you as well. So a number of areas have come up today, so we definitely want to make sure, you've seen we've had a report last year around family hubs. I would want to give you an update on that, and I'll talk about that in a little while. Send is a recurring theme, one of our biggest priorities. David and I and Vicky actually probably spend every conversation at some point, Send permeates it. So just to give you an idea of the intensity of the work ongoing, so we'd like to help you understand what we're doing, where our challenges are, and what we plan to do about some of those challenges, what we want to do next, and some of the barriers we have in being able to do those much more quickly. Language is really, really important in children's, and we've got a project underway within the team around changing the language, and I'll bring Vicky in at that point because I know she pertinently wanted to say something for us.
Dear Chair, I just wanted to ask if there could be some agreement, please, to look at the terms of reference where we reference looked after children, because we've moved away from using the term looked after children because the acronym that comes out of that is LAP. And our children have quite clearly told us they don't like that. It makes them feel as though they're lacking in something. So it would be really good if we could have a look at the terms of reference and utilise the terminology cared for children.
Will be changed. Right.
Yeah, to chime in with that, just a glossary would be great. When I first started here, a simple glossary on acronyms are the bane of my existence. It just, each, fact sheet, just a standard one at the end, and if they're updated, we should know.
Yeah. Mr. Lewis. Hello.
Yes,
welcome.
sorry, my first time speaking here. I just really wanted, I'm not really sure how to phrase this, but it's on the subject of language, and just from a church perspective, I was going to commend various voices that I've heard today talking about or centering the importance of the children or the students and the need. And it's so easy, isn't it? For instance, yourself, you did this really well. You were talking about transport being really expensive, but we're going to do it anyway. And I think I just wanted to say I have enjoyed the centering of the need and the centering of the actual children and students here, and indeed from Mr. Bird, the staff at schools and so on. And a recognition that perhaps when costs are massive, that's not necessarily by definition a bad thing. And when they get reduced, it's not necessarily, by definition, a good thing. And I think that's all I wanted to say. So thank you for recognising perhaps high costs for transport, high costs for send is supporting vulnerable children. And that's good.
Great. Thank you for those points. Duly noted. And I'll let Audrey conclude with a couple of things.
Thank you. That's really important and really valued by the team that you've recognised that. We exist to support the needs of our children, their families and carers, and whether that's statutory or not, we've talked so much today about doing things so much earlier. Take away some of the non-statutory work that we do, and by golly, it increases the statutory work significantly and potentially the risk, and it's our job to mitigate that risk, so really appreciate that. So a few themes that I just wanted to throw out there that you might want to think about, and there's lots of other opportunity. So certainly changing that language, I think really, really important, and I'm in my fourth, almost fifth decade of working in this industry, so I've been around the block so many times and heard so many languages, and so much terminology, so many acronyms. I actually emailed the team at the start of the session to say, can I have an updated acronyms document? And that's because for our lead member and our shadow lead member, I asked the team to work really hard not to use acronyms in reports. Sometimes we forget because it's just pace, so it's really important. So I've asked for that to be updated, including finance as well, because actually you, as FACS members, always have an open invitation to attend our schools forum as observers, and you can do that online or you can come to the July one in person. And sometimes I think, what does that finance term mean? I'm checking it because whilst I'm pretty good with the numbers, I'm not immersed in that on a daily basis. So I think that's really important. So certainly around our children's homes and sufficiency plans, certainly I heard foster carers earlier in the meeting today. So a number of areas that I think we could pick up on. I want to talk about one of the most important, and Vicky I think has already mentioned that. We'd like to talk to you probably at our next FACS meeting around our plans around corporate parenting and what we're calling our Corporate Parent Plus. So how do we wrap around more? What are our statutory responsibilities and yours too as councillors? I'd like our Family and Children's committee members to, if you like, I don't know whether this is the right terminology, but to be our champions. I'd like you to stand alongside us. We spend all of our time thinking about this, talking to people. We'd like you alongside us, wearing the same badge, the same ribbon, whatever that looks like, and helping us to help the rest of our colleagues here in the council, but also our broader and wider elected population to understand, including our town and parish councils if we've got that opportunity as well. So we'd like to do much more with that, and we will immerse you in that one as well. I'm going to finish on 2 announcements because there are lots of policy changes, there are lots of things on the horizon. I think colleagues have talked about the work that's ongoing with social care reforms. We anticipate some change around SEND reforms. We anticipate the detail around the children's bill. We'll see some of the detail of that coming out soon. And we will help you to understand that. We'll prepare some briefing papers and share those with you. Try and give you an exec summary, if you like, so that you can see what that means. And then I would like to suggest that we would try and help guide you around the particular aspects of those that are different. So what do we do now? What's new? What's different? And how are we going to transition to some of that work? And I hope you've got the assurance that what you get are objective viewpoints from us, not necessarily just narrow viewpoints. We will share that openly and objectively. So a number of changes that the team are currently grappling with and trying to second guess what we will be grappling with in the future. But certainly in the last 5 days, last Thursday, last Friday, I can't remember. It all blends together at times. The team put in a bid to DFE for some capital investment for children's homes. We already have a significant plan around not just our residential homes for children in Northumberland, having more of our children having their needs met closer to home. That's a favourite saying of ours in children's. How do we do everything much closer to home? We already have a significant plan. That also includes our Edge of Care team, our foster carers and our kinship carers. So that's a plan that's all wrapped together. We submitted a bid and were successful last Friday for funding 1.67 million to add to the pot, 50% match funded. That is for a 6-bed children's residential. But it's for some of our children who have the most complex needs. So absolutely delighted to be supported in that from DFE. And then only yesterday, you may have already seen the announcements, Northumberland has been chosen as part of the new public sector reform around test, grow and learn projects around poverty. So really good news, the only one in the North East to have been chosen. We await the granular detail, as our chair would say, and we'll start that work next week with Government Office directly. That will, without doubt, involve all of our work that we currently do around poverty, our holiday activity fund and our school programme that we've run exceptionally successfully for a number of years now. It will also involve and link into our family hub work and all of that work that we talked about earlier, doing so much more earlier, wrapping around families as well as children, and I'm talking about families and communities. So I don't yet know either the value or the granular detail of that, but it would be remiss of me not to end today to say a second announcement for Northumberland yesterday.
Thank you. So, we've had a fairly comprehensive, quite long meeting, 2.5 hours, but I think really valid given that it was the first one, gives a nice overview. The offer, as you hear it from Audrey and the team is, if you want to know any more, please ask, they'll help you. Rebecca's here as a resource as well, you can also contact me. I have no urgent business except to say that the next meeting is going to be on the 4th of September, so have a very good summer holiday, and again, on record, thank you to all of our staff, our parents and our pupils who do a fantastic job, and this team who are amazing. They are outstanding, in my opinion. There we go. So thank you very much for attending today.